I was thinking about how the world should have cried on the day that Jack Kirby died. And that's a lyric from a song called Melt by a band called Monster Magnet. And I don't know how long ago I heard that song. Could be going on 10 years and stuff like that. But when I heard that song, and I heard that one lyric, that's the only part of the song that even mentions Jack Kirby, I was sitting there thinking, damn right, you know. And today is February 6, 2014, and it was 20 years ago that Jack Kirby passed away at age 76 of heart failure. And this is going to be a little bit of a different video, man. I know, you know, usually my videos are, you know, full of little trivia and all that stuff, and everything like that, and that's not what this is going to be, alright? This is just going to be me pretty much remembering everywhere Kirby was in my life and stuff. I mean, it just needed to be done. It's bothered me all day and stuff. So it just kind of needed to be done and stuff. And, you know, for anybody out there who's actually spent all these years on YouTube with me and stuff, it should be no secret about me and Kirby. And, you know, I got the Kirby knife. I've got the, you know, Commandy talk and post-apocalyptic stuff and Fantastic Four and the Thing and all that, everything like that. You know, it's always gone back to Kirby. But what it really did was, you know, Kirby is so big, it would be ridiculous to sit here and try to explain his influence on everything that we have today. Kirby may not be remembered, and he may not be appreciated by, you know, generations of today. You know, I'm trying not to get too deep here, but Kirby's influence and Kirby himself is actually so big, that's exactly how it should be, because this is a man who did comic books, and it's influenced everything that you see, all the way up to the Avengers movie that made $1 billion, and the movies today, and even the cartoons, and still influencing a lot of the comic books and stuff. You know, I mean, what a legacy. You know, they're still mining his stuff. You know, we had Kirby miniseries last year from Dynamite. We had Godland from Joe Casey and Tom Scaglioli over there at Image and stuff that they put out and stuff, and it just still goes on. He's still remembered. He's got Jack Kirby awards. He's got a legacy. But with me, you know, it's to me, it's just really weird to have somebody on your mind that, number one, you never met. He doesn't know who you are. He didn't know who you were. Yet, he was such a big part of everything that I was into growing up, and little stories and meeting other Jack Kirby fans and stuff, that, you know, the guy actually gave us a gift and a hobby and stuff that, you know, I don't think he ever really knew what he had done, because the guy was just a workhorse who was trying to do a good job and provide for his family, you know. 15 pages a week. Is that right? Yeah, he was able to do something like 15 pages a week, you know, which is just, you know, if you've ever sat down and actually just tried to draw, that's amazing. And this is a guy that started out as a kid just sitting down, grabbing the comic strips out of the newspaper and tracing them, you know. You know, for me, it all started, you know, and I was seriously like 4 or 5, maybe even, you know, 3, flipping through that stuff. I mean, but, you know, around 4 or 5. And Jack Kirby scared the hell out of me with his artwork. It was so blocky and in big black blotches, and everybody was just so distorted in my eyes and stuff like that. And the concepts that he had, I mean, this is the actual, one of the actual books I remember reading, and I knew it was Jack Kirby, man. This is the Losers 161 from 1975. And it had a cover back then, and he had all these demons and stuff, and this guy was blue, and the coloring set me off, you know. I mean, it just freaked me out when I was a kid. And then he had this O.M.A.C cover, and I've told this before too. I thought that was a lady really chopped up and set in cement, you know. And I had to read this, I had to look at this. And right there on the first page, man, it was talking, so it was still alive, and I didn't know what was going on. To a little kid, that is terrifying, at least for me it was. So I stayed away from Kirby, you know. I was just, I mean, I'd see one of his books, and I'd have to, like, flip it over or put it out of the room or something, you know, because it was Kirby. And I was still reading all these comics. My dad and my stepdad and my uncle, you know, they were relatively young, and you know, I just remember seeing everywhere everywhere in this room and stuff. Man, it was Conan magazines and pulp. Everybody read back then. It was, you know, little pulp paperback novels and music everywhere, playing records all the time and stuff. I'd go to bed to, you know, Creedence Clearwater, Kiss, Led Zeppelin, you know, all that stuff back then. And they'd be playing in the living room. That's what I'd be hearing and stuff when I couldn't sleep, man. I'd be like, you know, typical little kid back then, sitting there sneaking, you know, reading these comics and stuff. And then I started realizing I was reading Jack Kirby and didn't know who he was. Because you got to understand, back then, even though Jack Kirby was a name and Stan Lee was a name, it was still more about the character. You got the comic because you liked, you know, this is before there were superstars. You know, they didn't really always put the credits in a comic book of who did what really until Marvel kind of started that and all that stuff, you know. But I mean, you read these books for Superman, you read them for the Justice League, you read it to see Batman and stuff, you know. The real superstars were, and the way I remember it, were just starting to be known, you know, right when I was actually starting to read these comics, and it was Jack Kirby off the bat. So what happens is that I remember reading like the first appearance of the Blob, and Jack Kirby did the art of that, and loved Fantastic Four. It had a cartoon, and we had, you know, tons of Fantastic Four books. And I can't remember if it's Fantastic Four 67 or 68, but it was the first appearance of him who became Adam Warlock. And it's got a white cover, and right dead center of the cover was this grotesque cocoon on it with a white background. And I had to color it, man. Yes, I colored it. I couldn't stand it. It was white, and that thing was so grotesque I had to do something to it for some reason. And we lived in a trailer, and in the back bedroom it was nothing but Kiss. It was just wallpapered in Kiss posters. It had a stereo, and right there was some milk crates with a bunch of records in it, and then right there in the room was an actual spinner rack that I remember being in the car when my stepdad grabbed it behind Magmart. They had thrown it away. He put it in the car, took it home, and there's Silver Age books right there. And that's what I would flip through and read. And it was always the Fantastic Four. And it was, you know, and then I started flipping through Commandy and stuff. Land of the Lost was on TV. All this stuff had like a zeitgeist. There's like this whole feel for this little kid bubble that was in my house when I stayed in the house, you know. So as I got older and stuff, you know, Saturday morning cartoons came on, and, you know, you'd be a little kid, you get your cereal, your Flintstones vitamin, and you plop down on the floor, put the blanket around you, put it on the heat vent, and Kid World and all this stuff, and you start seeing like Flash Gordon and Star Wars and all this stuff and everything, and I remember hearing about the Force, and I was like thinking about the New Gods. This is the actual comic, and I started putting together, oh, it sounds like the Source, you know, but I didn't think anything of it. It was just little kid rhymes, you know what I mean? This is New Gods #1, the actual one that I was reading back then, you know, flipping through it. Kirby was starting to lose his edge, okay? Time went on, and, you know, I got into Legion of Superheroes and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden this cartoon show came on, alright? I think it was like 80 or 81. I'm 7 or 8 years old, and it's Thundar the Barbarian. You know, and I'm thinking, oh my God, this is the greatest cartoon ever made, post-apocalyptic and everything like that. And I started remembering about Commandy, the Commandy comics we had in there. And thanks to this Commandy books, you know, the Commandy books that were in the house, this isn't the original one here. There's an episode where there's a village of midgets or something when I was a kid, and we all know midgets make everything better, but they were fighting some wizard or something. But while this midget was talking to Thundar, I started looking at his costume. I remember he had like it was like a blue robe kind of outfit, but he started having like, the designs on it were like zigzags and big white circles and stuff. And I'm like, that's Jack Kirby. And I remember sitting there, and I got this close to the TV screen, and the credits go by really quick, and I was looking for names, and I saw Jack Kirby, and I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. I was just so like, I couldn't believe it. Like, this is Jack Kirby, and that did it, man. All of a sudden, it was like I was able to take in everything. I was older now and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, you know, Thundar just got 10 times cooler for something that I just didn't think could get cooler at the time, you know. I started paying attention and stuff, and I started noticing how there's a lot of things going on that Kirby influenced. I got into the New Gods and Commandy, and I was able to read those O.M.A.C and be just kind of like, okay, I'm okay, you know. And he kicks so much ass in those books. After I got over that, there's one issue where he's just beating ass. Like, every issue he's doing that, but there's one issue in particular where he's just going. I think it's like number 5 or something. So all of a sudden, I'm like, oh my God. And then the guy kept influencing my childhood and stuff, right? So we had our toys back then. Star Wars toys, He-Man was coming out. And I started picking up that He-Man had some Kirby influence, comic book influence, but I knew it was like Kirby. You know what I mean? Like I could tell there was some, stuff going on here, right? And then in the midst of all those toys in 1984, when I was 11 years old and stuff, you started seeing these commercials for superpower toys, and I was just like, this is so surreal. They had a second wave come out, and I could not believe I was seeing Dr. Fate in a commercial and stuff. And then we had this come out. In the midst of all this, man, this came out, and it was Jack Kirby. In his later years, you could tell that you could tell the guy. You could tell the quality of his work was kind of starting to suffer, but it was from age, but it was still so good, so much energy and all this stuff. I mean, he's not writing it, and he provided most of the pencils and stuff, but he didn't really go all out on this and stuff. And then all of a sudden, man, there's the superpowers, and on the Super Friends, they revamped the show again, and all of a sudden, you've got all the Fourth World characters coming up, and I'm like, I cannot believe this, here are these comic book characters that you just never in the world thought you'd see animated, and there's Calabac and Desaad and Parademons in Dark Side, and I'm just like, this is crazy. So Kirby was just right there, man. And just these superpower books were just, I mean, for what they were, I was like, this is awesome. Yeah, they were a commercial for toys, and I always kind of chuckled because they'd had He-Man on there, and for some reason I just always saw He-Man being influenced by Kirby, the bowl cut, the sword, and I was sitting there thinking about Thundar, and I don't know if Kirby created Thundar or not, but to me, he definitely put his power on there, and then it's like his artwork to me was starting to get bizarre again, and I was like, wow. So I ended up so there was no internet back then, there was no magazines where I was living and stuff, so I started asking about Kirby by word of mouth and stuff, and people knew who he was, man. These guys that were hippies in the 60s and stuff were just like, all of a sudden, it's kind of like I'm in with the older people, because I'm asking about Kirby. And you start hearing these stories and stuff, ended up, in my teen years, finally made it to, like a comic book shop, and I look up and there's this piece of art, and it's signed by Jack Kirby, so I'm asking questions. And the shop owner sitting there telling me how he met Kirby, and his wife was there, and he was just a great guy. And he asked him to sign it, and he was like, I'll be right back. And he felt bad about it, because what happened is Kirby had gotten up, went up some steps, went into a room, and he found out later that his eyesight was so bad that he had to get like this to sign it. And then he brought it back down to him. Just a wonderful guy. And then in the 90s and stuff like that, the Batman TV animated series came out, and you could see the Kirby that Bruce Timm had in there and stuff like that. And then Bruce Timm, in one of these videos, was talking about when they got more of a crew in there. And they had never read Jack Kirby, so he actually made them do a regiment of reading Jack Kirby. Here's these young guys who've never heard of Jack Kirby, which I was right there was Bruce Timm, how can you not? That's when you start knowing you're getting old. And once everybody got in there and started looking at this Kirby that he made them read, they couldn't stop. They started doing it on their own and stuff, and that's the magic of Kirby. It's such timeless work, that's relevant. I remember flipping through Devil Dinosaur and 2001 Space Odyssey and Machine Man and thinking, this is kind of weird. Well, they were ahead of their time. They're genius. 2001 Space Odyssey is probably one of Kirby's most underrated books for what it is. I don't know how to explain it. It's so different, and it's hardcore sci-fi. And the weirdest, oddest thing I mentioned, it's kind of weird to be so attached to someone you never met, someone you never knew, and it's just through their work, and he doesn't know who you are, and he wasn't doing it for you. You know what I mean? I mean, he was such a nice person, and that's all you ever hear. You never hear a bad Jack Kirby story about him, screwing somebody over or being in bad stuff. But what happened was, now that I'm older, I've realized Jack Kirby was kind of one of us. You start hearing these stories by Mark Evanier, who was his assistant, and you start hearing how other artists were drawn to Kirby, not just in the comic book field. Paul McCartney wanted to meet him. They met in the early 70s. Frank Zappa actually had a real good friendship with him. And, and you're starting to pick up on all this, And we got to know Kirby through his work. That's what's amazing. I mean, we're 15 minutes in this video, and I'll wrap it up for you guys and stuff. But we started getting to know Kirby through his work. Kirby grew up in New York, and there were gangs. And I think Kirby even admitted he was part of a gang. And he put that in his comics. Newsboy Legion, Boy Commandos, Yancey Street Gang. And then he was in World War II. The guy, went and served his country. He's part of that greatest generation. He came out of that Depression era where you came out with a work ethic and they pulled everything out, and he was a patriot, and he put that in his comics. And you saw a lot of his World War II feelings or something like that in Darkseid. This is Hitler. He spelt Darkseid different. Everybody says Dark Seed because it's spelled D-A-R-K S-I-E-D, and that's the German spelling of Darkseid. So you could get a tie that this was the tyrant, just like Hitler and stuff. And that's what I mean. You ended up kind of getting to know him through this stuff that he was putting in his comics from his life. And he was one of us. I said that a minute ago, man. His room that he had was nothing but shelves like this and stuff, but it was full of sci-fi magazines and stuff like that, and he would pull that stuff out. And he was a fan himself, going all the way back to the comic strips, that he read. And the biggest thing is that we're showing sci-fi stuff, and we're thinking Fantastic Four and counterculture and Fourth World and superpowers and everything like that. And in the midst of this, you got to understand, he jumped on board, when comics were really young and they were making up the rules as they went along. Will Eisner, Jack Kirby, and stuff like that. And when Heroes after World War II went down, Kirby kept working and stuff, and he helped invent the romance comic. The man was inventing genres, And then, and I'm going to go blank in the middle of this, man, but like he got with Wally Wood and stuff, and he was trying to spread out, and he was trying to do comic strips for the newspapers and stuff. And he did something with Wally Wood in the 50s that even influenced a movie called Armageddon, that came out with Bruce Willis and Ben Affleck and all that and stuff, But all these movies that we're having that have been coming out, since like 2008, the Marvel movies, and even the Masters of the Universe movie in the 80s and stuff was influenced by Kirby. That guy who wrote that script admitted he was doing a thinly veiled New God story with the Masters of the Universe thing. And now we've got Asgard popping up, and it's Kirby's Asgard in the Thor movies, and Disney bought the franchise and stuff, and basically they brought Kirby. If you want to see the real House of Ideas, they're going back to what Kirby did, and what Ditko did. I don't want to just act like Kirby gets all the credit, but he's one of the big guns and stuff. So yeah, it's kind of weird how Kirby kind of stays in my mind, but how could he not, when so much of my childhood was influenced by him, and he's influenced everybody's childhood and adult life and stuff, and it's so big that nobody knows it. He's really influenced everything that we're seeing, even all the way up here to the big screen. If Kirby had been born on the West Coast instead of the East Coast up in New York and stuff, the man would have been making movies. He would have been making movies, So, is that what he really wanted to do? What would things be like if that's what happened? Think about, take all the Kirby influence out of comic books and take a look and see, what's left. Well, thanks for listening to me. I can go on and on, but, I just feel like I needed to make this video, so.